Hey, what is going on? Thank you so much for checking out the Contractor Secrets podcast. Typically, I wouldn't just jump in here like this, but I want to let you know how far this podcast has come since I recorded this episode that you are listening to right now. So, obviously, I'm coming clearer. I've leveled up, obviously, our audio equipment, and the podcast has just taken off with so many different directions. So, all that I ask is that, of course, I'd love for you to check out these early episodes, but if you check out season 2 and season 3, we have a ton of different coaching sessions, the business breakthroughs, and really just a lot of awesome content. So I'd love for you to check that out as well. But again, this podcast is for contractors or anyone wanting to start a business that really just wants some honest insight and feedback. My passion is giving back to anyone that wants to start a business or wants to continue to grow their business. That is the journey that I'm on. If you're interested in connecting with me, you can find me at Contractor Coach on Instagram. Or if you want to chat with me through email, you can find me at tanner@dripjobs.com. So thanks again for checking out the podcast. I'd love to hear your feedback. So if you can, shoot me a message, tell me what you think. And of course, if you're interested, we are also wanting you to join us on a business breakthrough. So you'll see what those are once you check out the rest of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and hopefully we'll talk soon. The big question you need to ask yourself every day is, do I own a job or do I own a business? And unfortunately, the majority of contractors out there own a job. That's right, they're a slave to their own business. But the other side of the fence is so much greener, it's so much better, and that's when you're finally fully in control of your destiny, your freedom, your time. And that's what Contractor Secrets is about. It's about taking back our time, building a business with systems, standards, values, procedures, putting yourself in the driver's seat. And that's what it's about. So I'm excited. I'm happy to have you here. Let's dive into the Contractor Secrets podcast. Welcome to the Trade Thrive podcast. This is Tanner. I am so excited to have you here, especially for the inception of this podcast, which I have designed strategically to help trades thrive. Thank you guys again for being here. Today, I want to talk to you about differentiating yourself from the competition. And our focus today is going to be the estimating process, which so many people have questions about. There's never a set way to do it. And for us in my industry, which is painting, I've kind of come up with a game plan to approach estimating, which I know for a fact you could implement in your business. So what we really need to do is we need to identify a couple things before we approach the potential client whenever we are facilitating an estimate. And by that, I mean we have to understand what is important to our clients. And by doing so, we can adjust our estimating approach based off of their need or their want. So with that being said, the first thing we need to do is when we get to the house, when we get there and we're opening up our introduction, we have a big smile on our face, we hand them the business card. What we need to do is we need to identify why we're there. Now, some of you may have gotten that information on the phone beforehand. Some of you may have an estimator that maybe didn't have that initial interaction. It doesn't matter. We want to know again firsthand why we are there. So I come up with a question, and my question usually ranges from what's the story? So why did you call us here? How can we help you today in a friendly way? And what I really want them to do is I want them to open up to me. I want them to tell me about what their biggest problem is, what the biggest concern is, or maybe what their want is, or how we can help them achieve their goal. Now, in most cases in the contracting business, now whether you're an AC company or maybe a tree service or a flooring company or a drywall repair service or even a painting company, I would say about 75% of all requests that are to contractors to come out and do work for a client is a need-based request. Now, by that I mean the need to have the service done is greater than the want or the luxury of just, hey, call a contractor, let's install, new crown molding for the heck of it, just because. Okay, so this focus today is primarily focusing on the need portion of our estimates. And that's really all they come down to, guys, is a need or a want. So once we identify what that need is, again, we can approach our estimate with that at the forefront of our minds. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask that question. I'm going to give you an example of a scenario that you may have heard one or two times. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through that scenario, and I'm going to show you how I would handle that scenario and some of the different things I'm going to say and how I'm going to react to that specific scenario. So here's an example in my industry, painting. You've heard of the HOA. We know what that is. And I'm going to give the example of a lady calling us because the HOA sent her a letter and they said, hey, if you don't get this house painted within 30 days, we're going to fine you, X amount of dollars. Okay. So when we approach this house, hey, Mrs. Johnson, how are you today? Oh, great. Thank you for coming. Okay, yeah, great. So what's the story? Why did you call us here? Oh, well, you know this. I don't know if you've been in this community, but we have an HOA and they're very strict and I've been putting it off as long as I could. And they finally sent me a letter and they're telling me I have to repaint the house. Can you believe it? Wow, Mrs. Johnson, I get requests for this all the time. One thing about us, now I'm going to pause real quick, guys. And what we want to do is we want to isolate the need and we want to provide a solution. Okay. So here, very simple, guys. All we're doing is taking the need and providing a solution. So Mrs. Johnson, one thing, about us is that we can get in here within, at least two weeks. We can have it done and we can save you from having to pay that fine. So what do? We kind of first of all, we created a solution. We said, we're going to get in there within 2 weeks. And then we isolated the problem and said, so you do not have to pay that fine. Okay. And you guys can use this for whatever need-based scenario pops up. So for example, if someone says, I need to get the AC unit fixed because, obviously I'm having friends and family over and, whatever the case is, make up your own scenario. You could say, oh, Mr. Johnson, not only is it going to be a benefit to have it fixed, we don't want to have mold issues or anything like that comes from having, the house sitting without airflow. So we want to make sure that we address that immediately. And I can have a technician out here. Actually, I have someone not too far away. We can have him out here today. Okay, so right then and there, you are differentiating yourself from your competition by being the solution to their problem. Now, I want to paint a picture of what it would be like if we did not do this. Hey, Mrs. Johnson, how are you today? Oh, I'm doing well. Okay, I'm here for your painting estimate. Okay, is there anything you want to point out to me? Okay, well, yeah, the bushes are in the way, and I'm really concerned because the HOA has sent me a letter and all that. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and do a measurement for you, and as soon as I'm done, I'll come in and give you a price. Okay, and then Mrs. Johnson goes back in the house, and there was no connection made. You really just blended in with every other contractor that just comes there and gives them a price. So you guys can see how valuable it is when you compare it to another scenario. And what we're doing is not rocket science. All we're doing is showing that we care. And once you start showing that you care, guess what? You bridge the gap between distrust and trust, and you create a friend. Okay, so now that we've highlighted the fact that we can become the solution to their problem, all right, now we want to differentiate ourselves from the competition. Okay, so what we're going to do at this point, guys, is if you do a walk around or maybe you break off and do your own estimate, that's great. You can either come back and do this, or you can do this as you're walking around the house, or maybe you're pointing out whatever product or service you're offering. You're pointing out that specific area and talking about, what they can expect. But what we really want to do is we want to create 3 value points. That's it. 3. Just focus on 3. What are 3 things that differentiate you from the other 10 or 15 guys that we can Google, and they'd be more than happy to come over and at least give an estimate? Why would they hire you today? What is the benefit? Okay, so hey, guess what? You're more than welcome to reiterate the solution to their problem in one of those 3 that you're going to mention. Okay, one wording phrase that I want you to get used to is saying, hey, Mrs. Johnson, one thing about us is that we are fully insured. We are fully covered. We have workers' comp, or whatever the case is, whatever value point you want to plug in. But you want to make sure that you're saying, hey, Mrs. Johnson, one thing about us or one thing that differentiates us from the competition or the other painters or the other tree services or whatever the case is, okay? And we want to get used to highlighting value points. I will never say that you should bash other companies. There is way too much value about you and your company, if you're listening to this, that there's no reason for you to bash another company. All you really need to do is highlight why you're different and how you're going to provide value. Okay, so we need to focus on those 3 value points, guys. All right, so let me kind of wrap everything up in a nutshell to help you understand how this approach is going to exponentially increase your sales ratio, and it's going to make estimating more of an experience than kind of just like I would say a cut and dry process of someone there presenting a price and ultimately just leaving. Okay, so this is just one part of the sales process, but I don't want to give you too much, because if I give you too much, it'll become overwhelming. I want incremental growth, and actually the most important thing is consistent growth as well. So what we want to do is we want to first highlight, understand, and provide a solution. Okay, how do we do that? So what we want to do is we find out whether the reason we are there is a need or a want. In this specific episode, we are focusing on the need. And if the need is something that we can provide a solution to, which is obviously we know that if someone needs something, they want it done fast and they want it at an affordable price. We know that everyone's all about price whenever it comes to a need, because chances are they didn't budget for it if they just received a letter as a surprise. So they're trying to figure out, what the painful expense is going to be. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that they know that we are the solution to their problem. Okay, and part of that is first we're going to identify how we can provide that solution. And in this specific case and scenario with the HOA, we make sure that we highlight how fast we can get the job done for them. And then we isolate, okay, by saying, hey, this way you don't have to pay the $500 fine, and instead you get a freshly painted house, or your AC works properly, whatever the case is, guys. But you have to identify that need, and then of course highlight how you're going to be the solution, and then of course isolate whatever problem it may cause if that solution is not met. The next thing we want to do, and this is after your initial walk around, during your walk around, or whatever it is, this is before you present the price. We want to highlight our 3 differentiating value points. That's right, our 3 differentiating value points. We want to make sure that our clients know that although there is other competition out there, although there is other competition, we are different. And this is how we're different. And I'm going to explain to you how valuable it is to go with a company like us and why we are worth the extra money. Now, we're not going to say that. The value is going to speak for itself. Okay, so if you can do this on a consistent basis, you're going to just be that 1% extra, that little bit of a difference compared to your competition. So with all that being said, this is what's going to exponentially help you sell more jobs, create a more customer-oriented estimate workflow, and really help you take control of this sales process as a whole. So this is just part 1 of a few that we will do on the sales process. This is that initial interaction, which is just as important as anything in the sales process. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. We're going to cut it there, and I want you to go out there. First, I want you to think about those 3 value points. If I came up to you, or you and I had a phone conversation, and I said, hey, what are the 3 things that differentiate you from your competition? And if you have to sit there and think about it, okay, it's not that there aren't 3 things. I know for a fact any business has different things about them. You need to rehearse them. Take the time to write them down. This is what's helping you sell jobs. Spend the extra 5 minutes and write down 3 things that make you different than the competitor. I mean, you earn them. I mean, one thing about us in my business is I have workers' comp, okay? And I am so proud of that, because I pay so much for it that every homeowner hears about it. And that's something I'm very proud about, because, I don't have to say other painting companies don't have workers' comp, or they just, they do everything under the table. I'm not going to bash them. I'm just going to say one thing about us, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, is that we invest in workers' comp to not only protect us, but to protect you. All right, just like that. And that's all you need to say. So you should be proud of these things that you're investing in, and you need to highlight them as value points. Okay, so the Trade Thrive podcast, thank you guys so much for being here today. If you're interested in taking your business to the next level, I encourage you to check out tradethrive.com. And what Trade Thrive is, it's an automation CRM. Okay, so what we use is what we call deal stages. And we use those deal stages to help automate follow-ups to your leads and to people that you've given estimates to. And we can get crazy in detail about all this, but essentially it takes your professionalism to another level. So if that's of all interest to you, check out tradethrive.com. I want to thank you guys for being here with me today. My name is Tanner. This is Trade Thrive, and I'm excited to see you on the next episode.